Hello, it's Tom and welcome to SoftTalk ASMR. Come a little closer. How are you today? Can you see my painting of Archangel Metatron there? Today's crystal is Ametrine. I've not mentioned this crystal before, I don't think, in a video. It's translucent lilac and orange yellow tints, cider colours, lilac and cider. Let's get this tripod. Nice and close. There we are. So Ametrine, what can I tell you about Ametrine? Well, from my own experience, this crystal is a very calming energy. One particular day I was out in the garden and I was laying down. It was late winter, early spring, so it was still quite chilly, but the sun was out. And I held this crystal in my left hand, my receptive hand, and I felt calm, relaxation, feeling of letting go. So it's got a very calming energy. In fact, I had a choice on that particular day. Do I reach for diazepam? Or do I stick with this Ametrine? I chose the latter. I stuck with the Ametrine. So I would say this is very good for people with nervous exhaustion, people with sensitization, people with severe anxiety. Ametrine, Ametrine. It's a combination of amethyst and citrine. And I should always remember that first time I held it. It's like being washed all over, refreshed. It's a nice steady calm energy, so that's another one I recommend, Ametrine. So how are you today? Are you enjoying the channel, the videos? If you haven't already, consider subscribing and clicking thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you. I'm going to do some reading today. Reading to you a few pages of the 39 Steps by John Buchan. I hope this allows you to feel sleepy and dozy and just relax and allow yourself to let go, because you can let go. If you wish to go to sleep, allow my voice just to ease you into fulfillment of sleep. And the other painting is Archangel Raphael. I did both of those paintings. Just above them is another painting. It's Archangel Metatron again. So I'm observing the fair use policy, and I'm going to read you a few pages from chapter 4 of the 39 steps. You may picture me driving that 40 horsepower car, for all she was worth, over the crisp moor roads on that shining May morning, glancing back at first over my shoulder and looking anxiously to the next turning, then driving with a vague eye, just wide enough awake to keep on the highway, for I was thinking desperately of what I had found in Scudder's pocketbook. The little man had told me a pack of lies. All his yarns about the Balkans and the Jew anarchists and the Foreign Office Conference were eyewash, and so was Karolides. And yet, not quite as you shall hear. I had staked everything on my belief in his story, and had been let down. Here was his book telling me a different tale, and instead of being once bit twice shy, I believed it absolutely. Why, I don't know. It rang desperately true, and the first yarn, if you understand me, had been in a queer way true also in spirit. The 15th day of June was going to be a day of destiny, a bigger destiny than the killing of Dago. It was so big that I didn't blame Scudder for keeping me out of the game and wanting to play a lone hand. That I was pretty clear was his intention. He had told me something which sounded big enough, but the real thing was so mortally big that he, the man who had found it out, wanted it all for himself. I didn't blame him. It was risks, after all, that he was chiefly greedy about. The whole story was in the notes, with gaps, you understand, which he would have filled up from his memory. He stuck down his authorities too, and had an odd trick of giving them all a numerical value and then striking a balance, which stood for the reliability of each stage in the yarn. The 4 names he had printed were authorities, and there was a man, de Crosney, who got 5 out of a possible 5, and another fellow, Amersfoot, who got 3. The bare bones of the tale were all that was in the book, these, and one queer phrase which occurred half a dozen times inside brackets. 39 steps was the phrase, and at its last time of use it ran 39 steps. I counted them. High tide, 10:17 p.m. I could make nothing of that. The first thing I learned was that it was no question of preventing a war. That was coming as sure as Christmas. Had been arranged, said Scudder, ever since February 1912. Karolides was going to be the occasion. He was booked all right, and was to hand in his cheques on June 14th, 2 weeks and 4 days from that May morning. I gathered from Scudder's notes that nothing on earth could prevent that. His talk of Epiro guards that would skin their own grandmothers was all Billy O. The second thing was that this war was going to come as a mighty surprise to Britain. Karolides' death would set the Balkans by the ears, and then Vienna would chip in with an ultimatum. Russia wouldn't like that, and there would be high words, but Berlin would play the peacemaker and pour oil on the waters, till suddenly she would find a good cause for a quarrel, pick it up, and in 5 hours let fly at us. That was the idea, and a pretty good one too. Honey and fair speeches, and then a stroke in the dark. While we were talking about the goodwill and good intentions of Germany, our coast would be silently ringed with mines, and submarines would be waiting for every battleship. But all this depended upon the third thing, which was due to happen on June 15th. I would never have grasped this if I hadn't once happened to meet a French staff officer coming back from West Africa, who had told me a lot of things. One was that in spite of all the nonsense talked in Parliament, there was a real working alliance between France and Britain, and that the two general staffs meet every now and then and made plans for joint action in case of war. Well, in June a very great swell was coming over from Paris, and he was going on to get nothing less than a statement of the disposition of the British Home Fleet on mobilisation. At least I gathered it was something like that. Anyhow, it was something uncommonly important. But on the 15th day of June, there was to be others in London, others at whom I could only guess. Scudder was content to call them collectively the Black Stone. They represented not our allies, but our deadly foes, and the information destined for France was to be diverted to their pockets, and it was to be used, remember, used a week or two later, with great guns and swift torpedoes suddenly in the darkness of a summer night. This was the story I had been deciphering in a back room of a country inn, overlooking a cabbage garden. This was the story that hummed in my brain as I swung in the big touring car from glen to glen. My first impulse had been to write a letter to the Prime Minister, but a little reflection convinced me that that would be useless. Who would believe my tale? I must show a sign, some token in proof, and heaven knew what that could be. Above all, I must keep going myself, ready to act when things got riper, and that was going to be no light job, with the police of the British Isles in full cry after me, and the watchers of the Black Stone running silently and swiftly on my trail. I had no very clear purpose in my journey, but I steered east by the sun, for I remembered from the map that I went north. I would come into a region of coal pits and industrial towns. Presently I was down from the moorlands and traversing the broad Hof of a river. For miles I ran alongside a park wall, and in a break of the trees I saw a great castle. I swung through little old thatched villages and over peaceful lowland streams, and past gardens blazing with hawthorn and yellow laburnum. The land was so deep in peace that I could scarcely believe that somewhere behind me were those who sought my life. Aye, and that in a month's time, unless I had the almightiest of luck, these round country faces would be pinched and staring, and men would be lying dead in English fields. About midday I entered a long straggling village and had mind to stop and eat. Halfway down was the post office, and on the steps of it stood the postmistress and a policeman hard at work conning a telegram. When they saw me they wakened up, and the policeman advanced with raised hand and cried on me to stop. I nearly was fool enough to obey. Then it flashed upon me that the wire had to do with me, that my friends at the inn had come to an understanding and were united in desiring to see more of me, and that it had been easy enough for them to wire the description of me and the car to 30 villages through which I might pass. I released the brakes just in time, as it was the policeman made a claw at the hood and only dropped off when he got my left in his eye. I saw that main roads were no place for me, and turned into the byways. It wasn't an easy job without a map, for there was the risk of getting onto a farm road and ending in a duck pond or a stable yard, and I couldn't afford that kind of delay. I began to see what an ass I had been on to steal the car. The big green brute would be the safest kind of clue to me over the breadth of Scotland. If I left it and took to my feet, it would be discovered in an hour or two, and I would get no start in the race. I think I shall leave that there. What do you know of the 39 Steps? The 39 Steps is a secret organisation. There have been many films, 39 Steps. I've seen all 3 of them. They're all slightly different. But my favourite is the 1978 version starring Robert Powell, where he refers to himself as the Liberal spokesman. Mr. Rawls, the Liberal spokesman. This seems to have made Callum very sleepy. I hope this has